This is John for Global Woman Sports Radio. Tonight, I'm back on the beat. I got a very special guest. I've got returning author John Cosper. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. I'm glad you're returning. It's always good to have returning friends, my friend.
Hey, anytime. Happy to come.
So the reason why I got you here is we're going to talk about you. You made a big announcement. You've got a couple big books coming out in 2021. But before we get into that, a little business, if you don't mind. A few of our friends had a little problems over the weekend. Charlie Kruel, one of
hmm
our favorite girl wrestlers, suffered a major concussion. She appears to be doing okay, though. Any news on that?
That's the word. I have not talked to her directly. I know she did suffer a concussion. She actually was taken by a helicopter to the hospital. She lost her gear. They ended up cutting her gear off just to taking precautions and everything. So I think hopefully worst comes out of this is she's got to get a new set of gear. But seems to be doing okay. Seems to be in good spirits. So based on social media, again, I haven't talked to her directly, but fans who want to support her, she's got her Pro Wrestling Tees shop where you can go and buy a couple shirts that'll help her get some gear. And I've got her book on the website, eatsleepwrestle.com. Charlie Kruel, Escape from VHS Hell. If you're a fan of 80s horror films, you'll love it. I mean, that's kind of her wheelhouse and what she loves, and it's kind of a fun little story about Charlie Kruel as if she were an 80s VHS horror icon herself. So,
And there's no better time to get it now. You could
absolutely.
support Charlie. You could buy him his holiday gifts coming up.
Uh-huh.
It's the best time. So our thoughts and prayers go out to Charlie. On another thoughts and prayers topic, our good friend Tracy Smothers is back in the hospital.
He is. Yeah, I actually just talked to him about a half hour ago, and in fact, right up till time to log on with you, I was putting a post up on the website. If you go to eatsleepwrestle.com, you can read what's going on. But of course, last fall he had his first round battle with cancer, which was really rough. He had 6 rounds of chemo, which is very intense. Was ended up being hospitalized about 3 or 4 other times in between there. Right now, he's in an even worse fight. The advanced chemo kind of damaged his heart, so he's been hospitalized a couple times with heart issues. Last Saturday, it was Saturday night. He had he had hernia surgery during the day, and Jesse Bell was actually at the Girl Fight show was supposed to stay, ended up leaving because he ended up was on a ventilator very briefly. Thankfully, he was able to come out of that, and he was able to go home on Monday. But he's very frustrated right now. I mean, Tracy, he's a very, very proud guy, very tough guy. This is a fight. He's ready to fight, and they can't treat the cancer until they take care of the heart. They can't take care of the heart until they finish taking care of the hernia. He does have masses on his lungs as well as his stomach this time, so it's going to be more challenging. They're going to be going with a less intensive chemo than they did last time. Just because of the heart issues. But I did post on eatsleepwrestle.com. There's a couple things coming up. First of all, Lincoln Mosley's organized a GoFundMe. If you just want to give some cash, you want to give $1, you want to give 10, you want to give more, that's a great way to go and support Tracy Smothers. His books are available on Amazon.com, also through eatsleepwrestle.com if you haven't picked it up already. If you have and you just want to donate again, I would say go to the GoFundMe. There's going to be a show going in Bartonville, Illinois this weekend. I've got a link up to that. That's on Saturday night, Halloween night. They're going to be doing a fundraiser for him. And a lot of things going on. I know Amazing Maria is working on a fundraiser show, I think, with Ian Rotten here in Jeffersonville. I believe there's one that's going to be going no, I'm sorry, Jeffersonville. Jeffersonville is where that one is. There are some folks working on a show down near Evansville, Indiana, and then I think Man Pondo and Too Tough Tony are planning to run one at the arena in Jeffersonville as well. I'll keep posting those links as they come up. Come out to the shows, buy some merch, put some money in for the auctions and raffles and whatever it is. Just anything you can is certainly going to help Tracy out right now. And if nothing else, look him up on Facebook. Just search for Tracy Smothers. Go post something on his wall. Say, hey, praying for you. Hey, thinking about you. We're cheering for you. Cancer's got nothing on the wild-eyed Southern boy. I mean, any bit of encouragement right now will really help him out. So, last fall he kind of had the book to keep him going, and every time we talk, I can't tell you how live wired he was some nights, when he's doped up on the medicine, when he's taking his chemo, he's like, hey, bring me some more peanut butter and this and that. He's telling stories and all that. And, a couple stories ended up, it was good therapy for him to get him out. And he's like, yeah, we can't publish that one, but, it's, it's a little different this time around, and he's really struggling. He's really discouraged. He's having to go through this again. So anything you can do just to lift his spirits, to help alleviate some of the medical bills is certainly appreciated.
Well, Tracy's a good dude, and we do encourage everyone to check him out, and send our thoughts and prayers to Tracy as well, and just hope for the best with him. But onto a lighter topic, onto a happier topic. You made an announcement about a couple books you got coming out.
I did, and I would have loved to made the announcement on your show like we talked last time, but it was I got a little bit of a nudge from one of the two that I'm writing with, and that's Princess Victoria. If folks who may not know that name, she wrestled from 1980 to 84. She was one of the first WWF Women's Tag Team Champions. She did work for the Fabulous Moolah. She's got Moolah stories. Victoria's got an incredible story. I've just been through a lot of the material that she's already written down about her childhood. I'll tell you, this is going to be a really hard book for some folks to read, but it's a really important book. She endured just unbelievable, horrible abuse as a child from her stepfather and a complicit mother who just kind of sat back and let it happen. And not just her, but her brothers and her sister as well. This is a very difficult read in some parts, but it's a story that she's wanting to share, really to help, encourage other people to, if you've been through something like this, to get help. If you know somebody who might be going through a situation like this, be on the lookout, because this stuff, it's more rampant than you realize, and it's horrifying. The things she endured, but Victoria is one incredibly tough lady. Obviously, she overcame those early circumstances as a teen. She moved out on her own. She ended up training with Sandy Barr out in the Pacific Northwest alongside Velvet McIntyre and Magnum TA. She's got some great stories about both of them. And she traveled the world. She worked in Japan. She worked for the NWA, carried the NWA tag belts, was the NWA Women's U.S. Champion at one point, and then the WWF Tag Champion before her career was unfortunately cut short by an injury in the ring. And then there's some further tragic circumstances with that, certainly with the way the WWF kind of, kicked her to the wayside, and then the Fabulous Moolah. Nobody should treat anybody the way Moolah treated her, unfortunately. But she does have a great story. She's a very, very funny person. She's a very strong person. She's a great storyteller, which is something I always I love looking for folks that are great storytellers. So was very excited when Scott Teal actually referred her my way and said, hey, if you want to put a book together, you should get with this guy. And we'll be starting on her book very, very soon, shooting for kind of a spring 2021 release.
That was going to be my question. So she and her people, whatever, came to you to do the book.
She went to Scott Teal with Crowbar Press, and Scott referred her to me, which I'm very, very grateful for. But like I said, she's already pre-written quite a bit of material, particularly about her childhood, and so it's really going to be just kind of filling in some of the gaps and then helping her tell the wrestling story and anything else she wants to tell beyond that, because she was out of the business in '84, and she's obviously had quite a few adventures and lived an interesting life since then as well. So, but she came to me on this one, which was really cool.
And when can we look forward to that? Roughly, timeline?
Spring. I'm hoping March or April this coming year. And
you have another book. I mean, you're loaded with news tonight, buddy. You've got another exciting announcement.
I do. So, Chris Candido. This is one that actually last fall when I was working with Tracy, about every third phone call, he would tell me, hey, when you finish with my book, you need to write Chris Candido's story. And if you ask Tracy Smothers, who's your favorite opponent of all time, he'll say Chris Candido. And he's not the only one. There's a lot of guys out there that worked WWF, that worked the Independents, that worked WCW, ECW. Chris Candido was a man who loved wrestling more than anything else. When he was a kid, little overweight kid, playing Little League, having to wear his Roddy Piper t-shirt instead of a baseball uniform because he wouldn't fit into the baseball uniforms. His coach pulled his mother aside and said, your son is never going to be an athlete.
Really?
He could not play baseball. He could not dribble a basketball to save his life. Couldn't throw a football, but I mean, he just lived, ate, slept, breathed professional wrestling. His step grandfather was Chuck Richards, who wrestled for the WWF and from Vince McMahon Sr. Way back. And when he met him, that really kindled a love for pro wrestling. And it's interesting because Chuck Richards was not one of the big stars. He was one of the guys that put other guys over, and that's kind of who Chris Candido wanted to be, and all of his life. And that's why he kind of had that attitude, when they came to him and they said, "Hey, we want you to put Barry Horowitz over." This guy who's worked for the WWF for 12 years and never won a match. He was like, "Absolutely, I'd be happy to." Was absolutely delighted to do it. He was a guy who, poured his heart and soul into the professional wrestling business, was always giving, at a very, very young age, was a veteran who was kind of pouring himself back into the younger generation, and unfortunately died, very, very young. Died at only 33 years of age, just through a complete fluke set of circumstances after he had gotten his life together and was able to kick the painkiller habit. But it's just been a great story to explore and to get to know. I'm working with Johnny Candido, who's his younger brother, who worked briefly for WWE and the revitalized DCW a couple years back. He and I are kind of telling the story together. I've gotten to interview Chris's mom. We talked to some wrestlers, we talked to some promoters and some other folks, some friends of Chris as well. It's just going to be a fantastic story. I'm real excited about it.
Well, I remember the storyline with Barry Horowitz was one of the funniest and I thought really coolest storylines, and that's cool to hear that Chris was really down with the whole story.
Yeah, that's for me. That was my college days. Was it 95, 96? That's one of the most memorable angles that I remember from that era. I was kind of watching off and on, and I remember when Skip and Sonny debuted, and I remember yes, Sonny was hot, but I didn't really care about that. She was obnoxious, and I hated her guts. I mean, she was awful on that microphone. She just made you hate her, and you hated, obviously you hated Chris by proxy. And certainly we found out later on in his career, Chris could talk just as well as she could. But when Barry Horowitz beat him, I mean that just felt great. And then he comes back and beats him again. And he beats him again. So and Horowitz kind of became a cult icon and became a star. Which he never would have done if Chris hadn't been that willing and that giving to do that for him. But I mean, long before I was ever talking to Tracy and even considering, doing something on Candido, I was like, yeah, that's one of the angles that I remember the best from my younger adult days.
Well, you brought her up. Certainly, Sonny's going to be part of I mean, not necessarily contributing, but she's got to be part of the story.
She certainly does factor in the story. The Candido, there's not a lot of closeness, not a lot of attachment there. So working with them, would not have been able to speak to her as it was. But as things turned out, she ended up going back to behind bars as we were starting to work on the story, and she's been there pretty much the whole time. So no, there has not been a jailhouse interview with Tammy at this point. So
now with certainly with no disrespect to Princess Victoria, she probably is not very well known by modern fans, I guess you would say, but she has a huge place in history. How do you think the modern fans are going to react to the story?
I think a lot of people, like I said, this is not going to be your typical wrestling bio because, I mean, certainly we're going to talk about pro wrestling, but she's got a very important message. She's got a very important story to share just with her personal life. A 3 and 4 year old child being, sexually abused by someone who's living in your house, and, the physical abuse that accompanied it, the emotional abuse. I mean, she's got a very powerful story, much in the way, AJ Lee's book was. AJ Lee had a really, really powerful story about her struggles as a child and growing up and the things that she and her family went through. So I think, people are going to connect with that as much as with the wrestling stories. And I always encourage, when I've got these books at the shows and I'm talking to younger wrestlers, and like a few weeks ago when I was at a girl fight show, I gave every single girl that was on the card a copy of the Elvira Snodgrass book. I was like, this is important, to know the history of the business, to know what these ladies did before you, to learn from what they did, to learn from their mistakes, to learn from their successes, and just to know where your legacy comes from.
Well, that's interesting because I think from the girls I've talked to from Girl Fight Wrestling, they seem to embrace the history. They seem to, it's part of their life. And I'm not knocking any of the other wrestlers in any of the big leagues, but a lot of them seem to, be there for the fame or whatever. But the Girl Fight wrestlers, at least the ones I've talked to, seem very dedicated to the sport and the history. So that's really cool that you've passed the book on to them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. That was one of the reasons I wanted to do it, was just to have, it's obviously a shorter book, and the print costs are kind of low on it. So it was a nice, low cost, something that I could have for sale, but also be able to give it away. I've always tried to do that with some of the wrestlers. If I see somebody that I really like, or if I connect with somebody who's got a love and got an interest for the history of the business, I'll load them up. So, and I always tell them, it's like, go back and, find out what people were doing in the 50s, find out what Mildred Burke was doing, find out what Elvira was doing, look at how Gorgeous George and Lord Lansdowne, how they developed these characters, because there's things that they did back then that haven't been seen in a ring for 60, 70 years. You find that one thing that could set you apart like they did. And that can be the thing that helps you to go to the next level. I always like to point to, one of the things, the guys I think takes a risk that I really appreciate is Mr. Darius Carter up in New York. He's a heel. He embraces it. He doesn't sell merch. He doesn't go out there and make you hate him and everything, and then come down and, I'll take a picture with me here, buy my T-shirt and everything. No, he's not going to be, he's the bad guy. He doesn't want you buying his shirt. You can't buy his shirt. And I always very much respected that about him, and the way he presents himself in that way. And it takes a lot of guts to do that, because that's your gas money. That's your McDonald's money for the way home.
Well, that's interesting, because I'm very interested in both these books for two separate reasons. I was a big fan of Chris Candido. My little funny story on him is I met him a few times, but I met him once at the Pillman Memorial Show in Cincinnati. And he, I was supposed to meet him and Sonny, and I had never met Sonny yet, and I was really excited to meet Sonny. Just before it was my turn to meet the two of them, they called her away for something else. And then Chris turned to me and goes, "Well, this is probably a disappointment for you, isn't it?" and I just kind of laughed. I said, "Well, no. I mean, yes, I would have liked to have met her at the time, but I was also pretty excited to meet Chris too." So we kind of shared a laugh about that. And then every time I saw him after that, he kind of poked at me about the joke. But I had since met her, and everything was fine. But so I'm really interested in that book, but I'm also interested really in the Princess Victoria book, because that's a book that really could be a crossover. Like, you made a comparison to AJ Lee, and I've seen her speak a few times at various functions, and that's an incredible. It's like I don't know if it's heartbreaking is the right word, maybe gut wrenching. There's her backstory is amazing, and so I can't wait to read this one too, because the way you're describing it, it's quite serious and quite in depth. So I really look forward to that one as well.
Yeah, like I said, it's not going to be an easy read in parts, but it's an important story, And like I said, this kind of abuse it's more widespread than you realize, and it's it's one of those things it'll make you want to be more aware and more alert, in case you happen to come across somebody that you can help out, and also letting people know that in these circumstances you're not alone, and there's help for you, and if you reach out, people can get you to the right places. They can get you to safety if you need to be. More than anything, once you're out of those circumstances, just finding somebody to talk about it with and to kind of work through those issues with, because you can't just walk out of something like that and just go live a normal life. There's a lot of things you need to work through, and with the right professional help and everything, you can get there.
Well, I, of course, had heard of her during her career, but I had no idea about any of this stuff, and I'm sure I'll learn a lot more in the book. So I'm really looking forward to that. It's an important story that needs to be told, and I'm glad she's letting you tell it with her, because I think you're the perfect guy to do it.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
I think it's and congratulations too. That's two big coups that you got there.
It is. So I will say, since we're talking women's sports here, I am in touch as well with the nieces of a wrestler from the 50s, Mars Bennett. Who had been, prior to being a professional wrestler, she was a strong woman, a trapeze artist, an animal trainer, a dancer, and a whole lot of other things for the Ringling Brothers Circus, which is a story that kind of caught my eye as I was working on Elvira, and then I just lucked out, and Chris Bergstrom of the Fabulous Ladies of Wrestling page on Facebook put me in touch with his nieces, and about the time I'll be wrapping Candido up, and I'll be in depth on Victoria's. I'm hoping to jump over and start working on Mars's bio as well. So that'll be two golden age ladies who actually died very young and tragically. And Mars died in a car accident at 57. Which brought her career and her life to an end. But another fascinating story. This is like, I got to know this. And just for myself, I want to dig in and tell the story, not just because of wrestling, but I was a circus kid growing up too. So I'm real excited about that one as well.
Well, that's exciting. the more I can learn about that era of wrestling, because it's kind of, I mean, first of all, it's many years ago, but
Hmm.
it's underappreciated and forgotten in the era of glitzy women and
Hmm.
the the WWE women, and they're fine and for
Yeah,
their own
yeah.
thing. But to learn about them is really cool, and I now I'm excited. I'm excited
Well,
about
that whole era is just fascinates me. I did my first book was all about Louisville wrestling from 1880 to present, and I went back and did a deep dive on a company called the Allen Athletic Club that ran from 1935 to 1957 in Louisville, Kentucky. I mean, just those stories alone, that's one of my favorite books that I ever put together. And I've already done Lord Leslie Carlton's biography and the Black Panther Jim Mitchell's biography, but I mean, those are fascinating times. I mean, those guys, they lived and breathed it just like a guy like Chris Candido did. This was the era of kayfabe, and they protected it every way they could. There's a great story. Lord Carlton was, if you don't mind a version real quick, but
no.
he was kind of a character, very similar. Basically, he stole his act from the same guy Gorgeous George stole his act, which is Lord Lansdowne. But where Gorgeous George went with the effeminate dandy, Lord Lansdowne basically became the British noble, kind of like or Lord Carlton became the British noble, just like Lord Lansdowne was. And he had when he was on the East Coast, he had a chauffeured valet named Jeffrey. When he was on the West Coast, he had a swami who could hypnotize his opponent. But there's a great story I appeared in. I think it's the Hatpin Mary book. But there was a reporter. I want to say it was actually in Chicago. So one of the newspapers. She was a very staunch, very staunch liberal. She was anti-Eisenhower, and I think it was an election year coming up. She was of the belief that Eisenhower was destroying the economy and things are just going from bad to worse. And she gets on one of the trains in Chicago, and who gets on with her but Lord Leslie Carlton. And immediately she's like, wait a minute, this is Lord Leslie Carlton. This is a very rich, noble aristocrat from England. He was actually a kid, grew up in California, who actually had Hungarian royalty blood in him. But that's another whole story. And he's on the train in Chicago instead of in his chauffeured limousine. So she's freaking out. To her, this is confirmation of everything she believes about Eisenhower destroying the country. And
Oh
she
man.
asks him, she's like, "Where's Jeffrey? Where's your car?" And he makes up this whole story and kept stating, "Oh, well, my car is me, and Jeffrey's with the car. I'll be meeting up with him later on this evening. I'm just meeting them down at the matches tonight." So,
Oh, that's
yeah,
hilarious.
yeah. So, but I mean, just like I said, I mean, these guys, I mean, they're characters, and the ladies as well. And anybody who remembers May and Moolah from the '90s, and they think Vince McMahon put a microphone on their hands and they took the mic and they ran with it. And they rewrote the image of women's wrestling from day one in their image. Moolah was the greatest star. And May was the greatest. No, Mildred Burke was the queen of the ring. Mildred Burke was the one working the main event, 2 out of 3 falls every night. And Elvira and June Byers and Mildred Burke, I'd lay even money. All 3 of those ladies could have licked Moolah or May on their best night. 10 times out of 10. There were some really tough. I'd throw Gladys Gillum and Mae Weston in that group too. Those are some tough ladies, man.
Well, see, that's why we need you to bring those
Mhm.
stories to life.
Yep, we got to tell the real story. I mean, WWE likes to tell the story of wrestling from their point of view, and
Oh, sure.
they're the center of the universe, and that's who they are. That's their brand and everything. But there's a whole other history out there, and they're great. There's the great Hall of Fame museum, an actual pro wrestling Hall of Fame museum down in Wichita Falls, Texas. You got the Dan Gable Museum, which is a phenomenal, pro wrestling weekend, and a lot of great exhibits in Waterloo, Iowa. And then we've got the International Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame that's coming in New York as well. They're actual real Hall of Fames you can go visit, folks, and you can learn about some of the guys that didn't work for Vince McMahon, who are incredible, talents, and learn more about Lou Thez and John Pesek and Ed Strangler Lewis and Mildred Burke and all of these other stars, who just as important in the history of wrestling as anybody who ever worked in New York for a minute.
And people could go to Eat Sleep Wrestle and pick up any of or all of your books and start learning more that way as well.
Certainly, certainly. I've got a lot of them up there, and I've actually got a stocking order coming in because Christmas is coming. I'm already starting to see the Christmas orders here. So, I've got Tracy Smothers' book, Madman Pondo's book, Hurricane J.J. McGuire, Scott Romer, the pro wrestling photographer. I've got 2 books on the history of wrestling in Louisville. I've got the Black Panther Jim Mitchell, Lord Leslie Carlton, and Elvira Snodgrass's book all in stock right now, and Charlie Kruel's book. Let's not forget about Charlie.
Well, hey, I don't forget about Charlie. She's one of my favorites. I picked up her book as well as Eat, Sleep, Wrestle.
She's the defending champion of the Pick Your Poison for Girl Fight, which is coming up again here in a few weeks.
I was gonna end on that now. I certainly want to talk to you before that, but real briefly, it's Pick Your Poison 2. It's an 8-woman, or it's an 8 tag team.
18 mixed tag.
Mixed tag. There you go. That's what I was trying to say, and stumbled all over it. And Charlie has picked her tag team partner, and Mickey Knuckles is also in that. There's 6 other girls. They've all been announced, and it sounds insanely good.
Oh, it looks this card this year is even more stacked than last year. I mean, you got Vance Warner's in there, you got Dale Patrick's, you got Larry D and Paige teaming up together. This is going to be a heavy hitting affair this year. And last year's was great. Pardon me. This will be the third. I think this will be the 3rd year he's done a midnight show the night before Thanksgiving. It's very important everybody knows this is Wednesday at 11:59 p.m. Don't come Thursday at midnight. They won't be there.
It's Wednesday, November 25th, 11:59 p.m.
Exactly, 11:59 p.m. Eastern. I will tell you, the Midnight Girl Fight crowds, they are the most live, the most rowdy, and just from the starting bell to the very end. That Midnight Girl Fight crowd is certainly the most one of the most energetic crowds I've ever been a part of. And I've been to I think 4 or 5 Midnight Girl Fight shows at this point. Pick Your Poison last year was fantastic, and really Charlie and Akira just ran away with it. It was the first time I ever got to see Akira work, and that kid is outstanding. He's a really, really incredible talent. But Charlie's got a new partner this year. I know Holly Cromwell is going to be involved in it. Billy Starks is going to be involved. I don't remember all the pairings off the top of my head again, but I mean, shoot, you got the possibility of seeing Lance Warner and Larry D exchanging blows in the ring, or Dale Patrick's. Come on.
Exactly.
Come on.
I definitely want to revisit this with you before the show. It's November 25th, so we have a few weeks beforehand, and I'd love to pick your brain and maybe even make you go on a limb and pick a winner at some point.
All right, that sounds good.
But until then, I encourage everyone to go to eatsleepwrestle.com. Check him out on Facebook. Look out for his books in 2021. We got a book on Chris Candido, and we have a book on Lady Victoria. And you got more stuff in the pipeline, and we're excited, man. We're very excited, very happy for you.
I've got a full slate for next year. A few other things lined up behind that, but three's good. Three's good to announce right now. So
well, as long as you give us, obviously on your website you get your own scoop, but as long as we're in the running there, the near future after your announcements, we're very happy to have you on, John.
Certainly, anytime. So, hey, what's your? I know you're up in the Chicago area. Is this? I'm a lifelong Bears fan. Can they win the Super Bowl with just that defense?
Boy, that's the question of the year.
I tell you, they look freaking great on the defensive side of the ball. But
they say it's the worst 5-1 team people have ever seen. The defense is really good. Foles is good, and they've got good receivers. Can they win it all? Boy, that's an interesting question. They can. They can. They've got the pieces in place. Now, will they keep them in place, and will everything play out?
Stay healthy. That's the big thing. If that defense stays healthy, I mean, it's going to be hard to beat them week in and week out. And if Foles has at least got that one big play, and then you pick up a pick six here and there from Eddie.
Exactly. or a jarring hit from any of our defenders.
Exactly. If we get one or two turnovers a game that lead to a touchdown or are a touchdown, then they're in the driver's seat. Yeah, I mean, right now you got a 3-headed monster rushing at you just about every play too. So I mean, that's one of the best fronts I've ever seen Chicago have. That even goes back to '85.
Yeah, it's scary good right now.
Yeah.
And it's fun. It's hey, I'm just gonna enjoy it for as long as it lasts. Right?
Same here.
All right, John. Well, I'll let you get to the game. I think it's just about
All
to
right.
start. So
All right.
I appreciate your time, man. Everyone, check out eatsleepwrestle.com. Check out his books and look out for his books coming in the future. And John, we'll definitely have you back soon, buddy. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, man. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, man. Have a good night.
You too.